critically analyzing global affairs. The Muckrakers on today's News Talk, TNT.
Well, hello and a very warm welcome to the Muckrakers with me, Andrew Eborn. This is the show where we strip the day's big talking points down to their bare bones and devour the red meat of pure debate as we focus on the stories that matter to you wherever you're listening or watching from around the world. Today we're going to discuss the US 9/11 terror attacks of 2001, the ongoing fight for 9/11 truth and why it's relevant today. Now, most people know where they were when reports came in of planes crashing into the World Trade Center on Tuesday, September the 11th, 2001. I was filming in Cambridge with Professor Stephen Hawking when those reports came in. And the attacks remain one of the most traumatic events of the century, not just for Americans, but also for the whole world. Now, the official US government narrative states that 19 terrorists from Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 commercial aircraft and crushed 2 of them into the north and south towers of the World Trade Center complex in New York City. The first plane hit the north tower at 08:46 Eastern Time, 12:46 GMT, and the second crashed into the south tower at 9:03. At 9:37, the third plane destroyed the western face of the Pentagon, the giant headquarters of the US military just outside Washington, D.C. The fourth plane crashed in a field in Pennsylvania at 10:03 after passengers apparently fought back. It was suggested that the hijackers had meant to attack the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Now, damage to the Twin Towers and fires led to their collapse, and the nearby 47-story building 7 collapsed later the same day, apparently because of fires fueled by office furnishings. Well, that's the official US government and mainstream media narrative. But thousands of experts have questioned about this official narrative, which cannot easily be dismissed. The reality is our world changed that day. The exact number of victims is not definitely known. However, the official death toll after numerous revisions was set at 2,977 people, and that doesn't include the 19 terrorists. Thousands were injured. As always, my mission on the Muckrakers is to uncover the truth. 9/11 changed the course of history. By finding the truth, we can change it again. And as always, I want to hear from you. This is how you can get in touch.
Thanks for listening to us. Now we want to listen to you. Our lines are open from the US and Canada. Call 1-888-201-6425. From the UK, call 033-0024-1026. And from Australia and New Zealand, call 1-800-670-310. Free speech is alive and well on today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
So if you have any thoughts on the topics we're about to talk about, please do get in touch. It's always good to hear from you. Today, the Muckrakers is made up of me, Andrew Eborn, Ted Walter and David Chandler. Now, Ted Walter is Executive Director of the International Center for 9/11 Justice. He moved to New York City 2 weeks before 9/11 and was a mere 15 minutes into his first class at NYU when the North Tower of the World Trade Center was struck. Although he had lingering doubts from the very beginning, it wasn't until 2006 that he began to critically examine the events of that day. Ever since, he's been a tireless advocate for 9/11 justice. Now, David Chandler is coordinator of scientists for 9/11 Truth. He has a bachelor's degree in physics, a master's degree in education, and another master's degree in mathematics. David taught physics and mathematics at the high school and undergraduate college levels starting in 1972, and he retired in 2012, working as a freelance programmer, product designer, and entrepreneur along the way. Since around 2007, he's been an active researcher with the science wing of the 9/11 Truth movement. Gentlemen, thank you both very much. And it's very early. I know, David, you're in Denver, and Ted, you're in New York State. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having
coffee here.
You got your coffee, keep it away.
Yeah, it's 5 a.m. here, so I'll try to stay awake all the time.
I tell you what, the stuff we're going to talk about will waken everybody. I want to start, if I may, about talking about Building 7, which you say is sort of a smoking gun, if you like, in terms of your extensive research. Now, the National Institute of Standards and Technology lead investigator Shyam Sundar, he concluded that Building 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings. It didn't collapse from explosives or fuel are oil fires. Can you explain why you dispute this official conclusion and why Building 7 is so important in the 9/11 attacks? Let's start with you, David.
Well, I think all you have to do is see it. If you watch Building 7 come down, and by the way, they haven't shown that on television very much at all. And the reason is it is such an obvious demolition. If you watch it come down, your very first thought is going to be, it's a demolition. When I first saw it, it's like it's sinking into the ground. I mean, it looked like an elevator going right into the ground is the way the impression. And a lot of people said it was coming down at close to free fall. So one of the things I did along the way was I measured it. I have a tool that you can measure things on video footage, go frame by frame and put a little mark on a thing and track it along. I use that in my teaching. And I was expecting to be somewhere near free fall because that's what it looked like. But to my great surprise, it came down precisely at free fall. It was solid, it was stationary, and then boom, it just let go and dropped. And it's just like letting go of your car keys and letting them drop. That's how fast it came down. And that can't happen. That's not what happens in a fire, where things let go one thing at a time and so forth. This was the entire building just dropped straight in.
And you say in your extensive reports, and I would absolutely urge everybody to have a look at the websites we put up the reference, but there's 9/11expertspeakout.org. There's a lot of material there, including the video as well, so people can have a look for themselves. What would you like to add to that, Ted?
Well, you have other evidence as well, in addition to the absolute free fall of the building. And I want to emphasize what David talked about, the fact that it is stationary and that it gives way just instantaneously. And last year, over the last few years, David and I have done some work together where we've measured the start of the fall from two sides of the building, so which is where we have video evidence of, and across the entire roof line of the building, not just in one part, but the entire roof line from one corner to the opposite corner, the free fall begins instantaneously. And so that's one way that we can tell that this is not a natural sequence of structural failures. If it was any sort of a natural event, you would have the collapse, the fall of different parts of the building start ahead of other parts. So that's really important. And you can find the paper that David and I published just last year on our website. Beyond that, you have eyewitness evidence of explosions. You have there's numerous eyewitnesses who heard a loud, clap of thunder. There's one woman, a reporter from New York One, even used the word a very loud explosion. So the evidence is kind of staring us in the face. We have seismic activity. Actual seismic signals were picked up right when the building came down. There's and I actually want to emphasize the seismic signal. The second seismic signal was generated well before the building hit the ground. It was generated right when the building started to come down, which is perfectly consistent with explosives, taking out the lower supports of the building. If you're going to have any seismic activity, you might expect it towards the end of the collapse when the building's hitting the ground. But we have the seismic activity right as the building starts to come down. So that's another perfect indication of a demolition.